I'm Charles Traub. I'm the chair of the graduate program at SVA called Photography, Video, and Related Media. It started about 27 years ago, and I'm honored to say that today's filmmaker, Lynn Shelton, was a graduate of my program, I think 20 years ago. We have, as a program, been at this business of making lens and screen arts for almost 30 years now. And Lynn is the epitome of the kind of activity, the kind of experimentation, the kind of direction and drive that we find exemplary among many of our students. I'm very honored that this film is being shown, and I hope you all will look forward to her new film, Laggies, which is coming out shortly. We're going to have, following the film, a question and answer period. It's going to be directed and interlocked, as we say, by Annie Malamet, one of our current students, who's going to follow just as readily in Lynn's path of editor, director, star, actor, filmmaker, video maker, experimental artist, all those things that we champion. I hope you'll turn your phones off and that you will stay for the question and answer period afterwards and come back again this evening. Finally, I want to thank Adam and Natalie for putting this all together. I want to thank the Rhodes family who direct our school and allow for a great deal of experimentation and unique education that probably doesn't exist anywhere quite like this. So I hope you enjoy this presentation and welcome once again. I just came from the Climate March and we're adjusting the climate here.
Carrie Lawler. I'm the Executive Director of New York Women in Film and Television, and we're one of the organizations partnering with SVA on this film festival. For those of you who don't know, we're a professional association of women in film, television, and digital media, and our goals are to gain equality for women in compensation, recognition, and opportunity. And SVA has been a partner with us for a while in working toward those goals. We've done a number of things. We have a scholarship with SVA here. Every year we give an award to the woman director who's done the best job. And we also work with SVA on screening short films by women in March on Swan Day. Swan is Support Women Artists Now Day, in case you don't know, last Saturday in March. And I wanted to introduce Lynn and also the student, Amy Malamet, who is going to be moderating this Skype discussion with Lynn Shelton. Lynn Shelton's first feature film, We Go Way Back, won the Grand Jury Prize at the 2006 Slam Dance Festival, and her second, My Effortless Brilliance, earned her the Independent Spirit Award for Someone to Watch. Shelton's breakout third feature, Hump Day, won a special jury prize at the Sundance Film Festival, as well as the Independent Spirit John Cassavetes Award. Her 2012 comedy, Your Sister's Sister, which we just saw, won numerous accolades, and her latest Sundance hit, which was mentioned earlier, Laggies, will be released nationwide this fall. Shelton has directed for numerous television shows, including Mad Men, New Girl, The Mindy Project, and the upcoming Fresh Off the Boat, airing in 2015. So I think Lynn is going to come up here on the screen, and Annie Malamet is a current SVA student in the same program that Lynn graduated from. So Annie's going to moderate our Skype conversation.
Hi, Lynn. Hi. Hi. Can you hear me?
I can.
Hi. Welcome back to SVA.
Thanks. I wish I could be there in person. I love SVA. SVA changed my life.
How does it feel to be back?
Great. Virtual.
Well, obviously, I'm in your former program, so I'm a little bit interested in your experiences. After SVA, how did your process evolve from experimental to narrative films?
Well, yeah, I made about a dozen experimental films, really pretty much doing everything myself, because at SVA, I was focusing on, I thought I was going to be a solo artist. And so although I did take classes in the BFA film program, so I took cinematography and 16 millimeter film making, but I really came out of the program, my work was very personal and very experimental, often incorporating a lot of documentary elements. And the thing was that my marketable skill was editing. And at the time, digital editing was pretty new. And so it made me pretty employable. And I also part-time got an opportunity to teach part-time in other departments at SVA. And when I moved back to Seattle, where I'm from, I moved back here in the very end of 1998. It was a much smaller filmmaking community. So I was given the opportunity to edit feature films and short narrative works. And that was when I started realizing, okay, this dream that I've always had, but never really had the confidence to do, which was to write and direct feature narrative films, I felt finally ready for. So that's what I started doing in 2005.
I'm really interested in what your SVA thesis project was. If you could speak a little bit about that. Was it a more experimental project?
Yes, it was an extremely experimental project. It was a 20-minute film that explored different levels of consciousness from a very kind of, the whole thing was shot from my point of view, basically. So the whole story was told. And half of it was video and half of it was Super 8 and 16 millimeter film. The first half was kind of like consciousness, like as I'm walking through a day, sort of day in the life. And then something triggers a visceral memory of a dream that I had, and it goes into this whole dreamscape. So I hand-developed Super 8 and 16 millimeter footage. My thesis advisor was the great Peggy Awesh, who is sort of a queen of experimental film, especially Super 8 footage. So she taught me, I blacked out my bathroom and took a hammer to the Super 8 film cartridges and hand-developed the film, getting really cool, and solarized it and got really cool visceral effects. So yeah, very highly experimental, probably the most experimental work of my career.
Yeah, wow. How did being at SVA influence that style for you and your current style?
Well, the thing that was so beautiful for me about my time at SVA was I felt like it was this bubble of time in my life when I could just dive into finding out my way towards being an artist. What kind of art was I interested in? And it was the first time I got to take theory classes. I'd never taken cultural theory or feminist art theory before, and that was in film theory. So that was really eye-opening and kind of mind-exploding, and just getting exposed to so much work and so many fabulous people, Sarah Charlesworth and Charlie Traub and Ed Bose, everybody that I worked with there was, I don't know, it was just this sort of inundation of media, and I felt my inner being starting to kind of just explode. I felt so encouraged to just explore. And I really did. I mean, I tried so many different things out. I started when I entered that program, I was doing very sort of Robert Frank style, black and white, off the hip, street photography. And from there, I just tried all kinds of stuff. I did conceptual, I did more conceptual based art. I made 3 different films, and just tried stuff out. It was really wonderful.
Yeah, you mentioned that you took some feminist theory courses, and I'm interested. There's a There's a real need right now in cinema for authentic depictions of female relationships, and I think that this film really addresses that. Can you speak about that in regards to this film?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things, so the original idea for Your Sister Sister actually, you know, Hump Day was a film that I kind of created. It was the one I made right before this. And I really wanted to work with Mark Duplass, who I met recently and seen on work on set on another film that I was doing still photography for, actually. And I thought of this idea, and I pitched it to him, and then we sort of developed the characters, and I created the script. It was very collaborative. And we really enjoyed the process, and the film did great things for both of us. And so he came to me with an idea that this film was based on, you know, like, I don't know, a year and a half, 2 years later, something like that. And originally, in his original conception, it was going to be best friends, a guy and a gal who were best friends. She goes up to she sends him up to their family cabin. And instead of meeting her sister there for the first time, he encounters her mother. It was going to be this kind of mother-daughter, you know, bed-switching comedy romp thing. And I pretty quickly, the first thing I did was to change the mom into a sister, just so we could get out this weird Oedipal layer. But also because I thought I really wanted to explore this idea of sisters, and specifically sisters that have a lot of layers of baggage in their background. So they really, really want to connect. They do deeply love each other, but there's also, it's complicated, and there are points of friction. And so that was when I came up with this idea of that they're half sisters, and that, you know, what better kind of point of friction than the beginning of the relationship being, you know, that the reason for the existence of the younger one is because the dad left the mother of the older one. So anyway, in general, I feel like it definitely, I mean, if you guys have all heard of the Bechdel test of whether there's so few films where women are depicted and given an opportunity to actually have conversations and whole lives that have nothing to do with the men in the story, you know, or maybe there are no men in the story. And I didn't have that in mind when I was writing this movie, but yeah, I'm a feminist filmmaker, so even my movie about a bromance between two guys is definitely from a female perspective, you know? So it's something that I can't help but do, I guess. I don't really have a choice.
Right, of course. I thought that the most moving part of the film for me was the sequence when Hannah and Iris are alone together and making up and rebuilding their relationship. You talked a little bit about how this was a collaborative effort, and Rosemary DeWitt and Emily Blunt created their characters. What was the extent of that? Did they have full backgrounds and stories? How did you collaborate on the building of those characters?
Yeah, Hump Day was was the first time I worked in that way, and it was over several months of, we all lived in different cities, so I would just get on the phone. It wasn't like an intensive, like Mike Lee gets together for months, several hours a day with his actors. It wasn't like that for me. It was on the phone every few, 1, 2, 3 weeks. I would get on the phone and have these kind of 1 or 2 hour long confab sessions, and then I'd go away and work on the script and kind of write things up. We did something very similar with Your Sister Sister, except in this case, I actually lost one of my actors 3 days, 2.5 days before we were going to start shooting. It was very dramatic, and I really I assumed that the project was dead in the water at that point. But luckily, we were able to get. Rosemary was completely excited, so she actually stepped in at the last minute. She was like our pinch hitter. And the good thing was that the work I had done with the other actress was still all there. So we had this tremendously rich backstory, and I just finished typing it up. A lot of it was in our brains, but I just got it all onto the page for her. And in this case too, I had I called it a scriptment. It was like 80 pages of dialogue. Some of the scenes were not scripted, but most of them had at least some kind of dialogue as a jumping off point. So all of those things really added up to, giving her a good foundation for what this project was going to be. And then I got on the phone with her for a few hours and sort of, finished filling in those blanks. But when I'm working with the other actors over that long development period, what's nice is we're all getting to know each other. We're gaining trust in each other, and we'll just brainstorm. There's no judgment. People will come up with all kinds of interesting ideas. And then it's my job as the writer to go away and kind of prune out the stuff that's not really going to serve us overall, So the backstory has to serve the narrative thread, and sometimes those things don't work out. They have to mesh together. But involving the actors in that way means that they're going to end up with roles that fit them like a glove, which is great, and feel really real to them. And the chemistry between everybody is going to be very palpable because they've gotten to know each other over that time.
How did switching actresses change the chemistry between the three actors?
Well, in one way, it was very helpful because two of the characters, Jack and Hannah, aren't supposed to actually know each other. So they met, the day that we started shooting. And I think that was actually great because it really helped to, it helped them in that awkwardness. They didn't have to recreate that, which was nice. And, but I don't know, Rosemarie was she and Emily they were staying in a house. We were all staying in this, in a few houses right next to the picture house where we were shooting it. It was this really idyllic kind of situation. Nobody was going far away to a hotel or anything. We were all staying right there and eating and walking from house to house. But the two actresses got their own house, and they stayed up really late, the first couple nights and just got to know each other. And then Rosemarie did, she added her own stamp. So we changed the name of the character for her. I let her name her character, and we just found, and we had to change the backstory as well because the original actress was British. And so because they were half-sisters, I realized, I can use an American actress because they can just be raised in different, by different mothers, and it's totally fine whatever country they're in. So it actually worked better in a way, I think, because people were sort of tuned. I mean, you guys can tell me, but I've found that people liked the fact that the fact that they have different accents is like, a sticking point until you sort of find out, they're half-sisters. And so I think it kind of sinks in a little bit more even that they're only half-sisters. And so it actually, I think, helped in a lot of ways. And now it's so impossible to imagine anybody else in that role. I mean, she just owned it so beautifully.
Yeah, she did. In your other films, like Hump Day, it seems you're very interested in non-traditional relationships and changing the landscape of what a family or a friendship can be. Can you talk a little bit about that and your interest in that?
Yeah, I think I realized recently that one of the first films I saw that made a big impact on me for that very reason was Harold and Maude. And in that case, it's a romantic relationship, but the idea of this relationship that's not supposed to work, when you look at it on paper. And in that case, I think he's 20 or something, and she was about to turn 80. And I found it completely believable. I totally bought it that these two individuals would have this soul connection and that they would actually be able to fall in love. And it made a huge impact on me as a teenager. I think I found it so incredibly romantic, this idea that anybody, well, first of all, that you can live a life that's not conventional, and that includes in relationships. It includes connecting with who you connect with and falling in love with who you fall in love with. And, I really, I find something so empowering and exquisitely poetic about that. So yeah, it's something I think, but again, naturally I kind of gravitate towards.
Right, and that would make sense being that you switched the mother, because that's such a typical story, the Oedipal story, and I think that this works much better, especially with the parallels between Jack and his brother, and yes, exactly. In one of your more recent films, Touchy, you actually were the editor, and you spoke earlier about how that was your professional skill that you came into SVA with. Did being the editor for that film change your approach to directing or in any way?
You know, I can't remember if I even knew I was going to be the editor, but you know, I edited my first two films as well. So I just wanted to get back in touch with that process, and it was really nice to, and it was such a personal film. Touchy Feely is probably the most personal film I've made of my narrative films, and I felt very vulnerable making it, and it was a very, it was a really intense experience, and I just felt like I would feel more if I didn't have to communicate with and collaborate in that phase of it. It would just be that was just my gut. It felt like it was just going to go better. And because it was also a journey for me trying to figure out what was the story I wanted to tell precisely, and how I wanted to balance it. So that was definitely a film that kind of came together a lot in the edit room. And so it didn't really change anything, because even when I use an editor, I'm there the whole time. And it's basically like I have an ally. Nat Sanders is the editor I've worked with, the only editor I've really worked with who's not me. And he's told me that, it's really different to work with a director who's also an editor, because a lot of directors will just go away and kind of come and check in now and then, but he and I are just in there like a two-headed monster, you know. So I don't think it ever changes the way I direct. I always direct in the same way.
Well, I'm going to ask one more question, and then I want to open it up to the audience. You can line up here at the microphone if anybody has questions to ask Lynn. My last question for you would be, you talk a lot about collaboration, and film is an incredibly collaborative art. You can't make a film without an entire group of people. What is your favorite part about collaboration? How do you feel that enriches your process?
Well, like I said, I really was, I was a solo artist for so many years. And for me, it was a really nice way to come to filmmaking, because I could do everything. I was playing with, when I was in school at SVA, I was learning how to edit. I was playing around with sound design, I was playing around with, of course, finding out what I liked visually and what was my visual aesthetic. But when I got on the set of my first feature film, narrative feature film in 2005, it was so transformative, that experience. I think part of it is that I really am a control freak. and so it was terrifying to actually be able to develop enough trust in relationships with other people that I could, entrust them with my vision. And once I saw, and I happened luckily to have a really, really positive experience, because it's all about who are your collaborators. That's the most important thing. And then once you have the people that are the right people and that you can trust them, you need to actually trust them. You need to actually give them, give them an opportunity to input and not micromanage them and not try to just, make it like you're the only one doing it. And if you can do that, if you can actually find collaborators to trust, actually trust them and make it your, our project instead of just your project, I find that, collaboration, that kind of collaboration is going to bring the best out of you and everybody else. And you're going to have something that's greater than the sum of its parts at the end of it. And it's absolutely, for me, it's just the most exhilarating, most liberating, fantastic way to make work. It really, my whole, everything I do now is all about, creatively, is all about relationship.
Well, if anybody has questions for Lynn?
My question is, you spoke about collaborating heavily with the actors in the development of the script. How much did that carry over when you were actually filming? Was there room for improvisation? Was there room for kind of coming up with new developments of the script and the story?
Yeah, it continues the entire time in those circumstances. It depends. Like the film that I just made that's going to open on October 24th nationwide. Please go see it. Laggies was written, and we probably improvised maybe 5% of the time. There were little ad libs that ended up in the film, but with Hump Day, just again as a kind of a starting point, I wrote no dialogue. Every single piece of dialogue is improvised. And with Your Sister's Sister, because I had less experienced improvisers, I had a script as a jumping off point, but still it ended up being 70-75% improvised. So that was the plan, that we would take those words and just kind of put them aside and use it as a roadmap, but not ever feel tied. So the actors had complete freedom to find their own way through the beats of the scene. So we had an incredible amount of detailed backstory, and we knew what had happened up to the moment that the scene was taking place, as well as an emotional map for what needed to happen in the scene. And then once we talked ad nauseum, we would never rehearse, because with improvisation, a lot of times the very first time is the best take. So you basically want to be shooting the rehearsal. But we did talk a lot, to make sure everybody was on the same page. And then I'm using 2 cameras at the same time, one on each actor, so that we can let the cameras just go and roll and roll and roll. And sometimes we'll shoot, 20, 25, 30 minutes for a scene that's going to get cut down later into a 5 or 10 minute scene. So the editing is really essential, because it ends up, that really is where the final script is written, is in the edit room.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Lynn.
Hi.
It's nice to meet you. I really enjoyed your film. As an actor, I was wondering, I noticed you said that there wasn't a rehearsal process, but I really enjoyed the first scene between the 2 women in the bed when they were facing each other. And I thought that was really beautiful and touching. And I noticed all of your actors throughout the film were extremely connected to each other, to the work. They were concentrated and they were relaxed. And I was wondering if you could speak to, I know you didn't have a rehearsal process, but if you had some sort of a meeting in the morning or some kind of anything like that before you started shooting.
I'm not big on rehearsing, even when I have a script, with words that we're going to use. Mm-hmm. In the traditional sort of, let's figure out, how we're going to say these lines kind of way. Yeah. I mean, maybe we might sort of read through the lines and talk about them. I did that with Sam Rockwell a lot. Mm-hmm. But especially with Your Sister's Sister and my improvised films, again, I really don't want to waste anything, because the improvisation is so, it creates this kind of electricity. Sure. There's this sense of immediacy. I mean, you're genuinely reacting to what this person is saying to you, and you don't know what they're going to say to you. That's what's so beautiful about it. So even in those scenes with the 2 sisters in bed facing each other, or not facing each other, but in the 2 shot of them, there's 2 scenes like that. A lot of the words that they used, a lot of the lines were actually either exactly how I'd written them or very similar. Sure. But they would be slightly out of order, or they would, they'd add a little something. They do something that, again, still to keep it immediate. And so to create the intimacy, that development process I talked about is incredibly helpful, because I'm getting on the phone, not just with them one at a time, but often there will be me and the 2 actresses, or me and, like Emily, Mark, and me. They were supposed to be best friends, right? So we'll all get on the phone together. And then with both Hump Day and Touchy Feely and Your Sister's Sister, I flew down to LA, and we all had kind of a couple of days, like a workshop, where I'd like make dinner for them, or sometimes we talk about the project, but a lot of times we would just hang out, we're just getting to know each other.
Yeah.
It really helps, and again, the situation in Your Sister's Sister, the shooting situation was my fantasy come true. It's my ideal way to make a movie, to kidnap an entire, cast and crew and take them to this remote island. And you're all on the same little compound and nobody is there. So the off hours where we're all eating together, we're watching Conan the Barbarian at, together in the basement, or having dance parties or campfires or whatever. That's all going to feed into the set vibe because, not only are the cast comfortable with each other, but they're also really comfortable with the crew, Yeah. And so I'm also choosing who I want to work with on the crew really carefully as well, and making sure that everybody is going to be, there's not going to be any toxicity on the set. Nobody is going to be yelling or mean or whatever, or not just grumpy. I want like happy, loving, sensitive people, so that we can create this very emotionally safe playground for everybody to do their best work.
Cool. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
We can take 2 more questions for Lynn.
Hi, Lynn. My name is Daniel. I was wondering what would be some of your future projects and who would you like to work with as far as the artists in your future projects?
Well, my God, I have a long list. I'm a real actor geek of a director. I'm somebody who my favorite thing is to roll up my shirt sleeves with actors and just get into, have the cameras rolling and just go into trying to find the shape of the scene and those little subtle moments of discovery, in each scene. And there are so many actors that I admire, and they're the ones that I'm kind of, focusing on. And some of them are people that, some of them are sort of bigger names because they've done a lot of work and I've just seen their work and admired it. And then some I have people here in Seattle that I would love to build entire films around that are so talented, and they're just these sort of undiscovered folks. So for me, it's all about, when I see somebody work that there's something that kind of just hits me, it's like getting punched in the gut. It's a very gut level thing. And I feel like, we're going to, I think we would work well together. We would be able to bring the best out of each other. I have to say that although I am a real sucker for visual beauty and for the kind of long, beautiful, exquisite cinematic moments, that you see in a lot of films, I have so little patience for setting up, spending days to set up the perfect crane shot as a filmmaker myself. And it may happen someday if I have an unlimited budget and an unlimited amount of time. But what I really love to do is just really get in there with the actors. So I feel like if I even say a single name, I would be jinxing my opportunity to work with any of these people. So just suffice it to say, it's a long list.
Lynn, it's Charles Schraub. Hi. I guess you're not going to make Barry Lyndon again, huh?
Probably not.
I just want to congratulate you, and I'm really talking to the audience, not to you. I think you all pick up on how positive she is as a filmmaker, as a person, and that spirit was part and parcel of her learning process that she's talked about, earlier in this discussion, of engaging in all aspects of experimentation and theory and feminist theory and ideas about what the camera is and can do. And I'm just so happy for your success, but I want to ask one question. Tell us about Laggies. What's to come next?
Well, thanks, Charlie. It's so nice to see your face. I'm so sad I'm not there. So Laggies is exciting for me because it's the first film that I've made. It's my 6th film, and it's the first film I've made that didn't come from my own, writing, basically, or collaborative writing, but my own sort of origins. And I've had agents and I've had representation in Los Angeles since Hump Day went to Sundance, and my agents have sent me many, many, many scripts. And I almost was getting to the point of just wanting to say, I think it's useless for you to send me any more scripts because these are really beautiful stories and they're really well written and they're all compelling, but I'm just not feeling personally connected enough to any of them to want, to feel like I should or could or really, really want to direct them. And this was just like a bolt out of the blue. Reading this story was so, it was just, I was gobsmacked. I was like, oh my God, I have to direct this. And I think I just had a real affinity with the author's voice, Andrea Siegel. And so that process, but we are different, she is a different person than I am. And so that process of trying to collaborate with a writer was really exciting and new for me. The budget was also bigger than any time I've ever worked before. All of my budgets have been well under $1 million, and this one was not. It was many millions of dollars. And that was incredible too. So to work on a larger canvas, and with a bigger scope, was really, really exciting. And I'm very curious about. I mean, so far it's been received really well. It was at Sundance and at Toronto Film Festival last week, and it's really it seems to be received well. But I'm really interested to see how it does out in the world. So Keira Knightley plays a 28-year-old woman who's kind of at a quarter midlife crisis when she realizes she hasn't found her place in the world yet, and has to kind of figure out how she's going to go about doing that, or if she's even ready to. And then she ends up hanging out, kind of hiding away from her real life for a week with Chloe Moretz, who plays the 16-year-old that she befriends in this kind of strange but believable way. And she ends up hanging out with Chloe and with her dad, played by Sam Rockwell. And it's just I'm really proud of it. I'm so excited for it to come out.
We look forward to it, and after it's a big success, will you come back and talk to us again?
Yes, I would love
We're
to.
going to make you do it. Thanks.
Okay.
Love you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you so much, Lynn, for coming and spending your time with us, even through Skype. It's great to meet you.
Yeah, great to meet you too, Annie. I hope it happens in real life someday.
It will. I have faith that it will. Thank you so much, and what a beautiful film. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you.